All right, everybody. Welcome to the Monday webinar Monday member webinar. So it's 4:30, and thanks for joining me. I know not everybody can join on a half hour after the close, but a lot of stuff to go over, and it's funny because the market really took off pretty nicely today. A lot of growth areas really rallied today, and just a little bit of timing that was off, I would say, in terms of giving the webinar. But, I was going through a lot of charts this weekend. As I was kind of at the end of the weekend, I'm like, hey, things are actually, there's a lot of nice setups. Even though the overall indices are, underwater and, have been coming back from the lows. But, I continue to see a lot of nice setups in individual names. So, I think we've been doing very well finding those setups. And again, I would rather go long names that are have that relative strength to them and have held up really well in the last couple over the last couple months. But some names as well. I'm playing a couple names that are at like basement level lows as well. So combination of things. But we'll start with the major indices, and then I'll go into sectors. I really wanted to touch upon three sectors. So, by the way, tonight's webinar, as always, for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations or anything like that, all for information purposes only, because I will be sending this out later. So, one of the things that I come back to is, I do think now that the price. So, a couple of things. The price has been above the 5 period moving average. We've been climbing back. That's been kind of my reference point, to kind of wait after this big move down happened, to kind of wait and be patient and wait for the price to get back above some of the short term moving averages, and so we've achieved that. And then you start to kind of look around to see what's performing a little bit better. Also, a little bit from the newsletter that we put out this weekend, a little bit about market sentiment, which this is in Barron's every weekend. This is the Citigroup Panic Euphoria model, and you could see. Just give me 1 second, guys. I'm just going to put this on hold for 1 second. All right, sorry about that. I'm back. Okay, so that and the combination between the various different market sentiments. I like this one because it was right. Helene Meinster put this out, or Meisler, if I'm mispronouncing her name, but this was important back in September. This was flashing euphoria. So, if this works pretty well back here, I tend to like where it is right now as well with the panic on it too. So, just a combination of kind of helps me say, hey, I want to take a few more positions given that the sentiment is so low. And I know some people look at the fear and greed index. There's various different sentiment models, but I know this one worked very well back in September for when this thing got into euphoria. So one of the things that I put in the newsletter this weekend was the small caps and the micro caps. Those that really let us down. That was the first thing that broke before the S&P did. So, anytime we could get a little bit of a hint on the overall market, but I've been, this is something that I do from time, over time, I really look at the small caps because, yeah, they started to break down, all the way up here. This was what, 10-1, versus SPY was, well, let's see, they actually did, well, no, this was a week later. You know, this was a few days later that SPY broke down. So I think IWM really did it first and went down harder first as well. So now we see it, moving back up, and we've got some nice things that we've retraced here, and we still don't have resistance. We're at the point of control. So we've got resistance all the way up at 145.82. That's coincides with the 50-day moving average. Of course, we could back and fill here a little bit because we've been basically straight up since for the last week, except for the one day, which was Thursday. And then also, if you look at microcaps as well, they're also moving nicely through the value area. They have a little bit closer resistance, but 88.53. So this also is good to kind of keep in mind once the indices kind of come upon a little bit of resistance. I want to be careful of that in my single stock positions, right? So I'm going to look at that. Uh, but it just kind of helps me to kind of look at overall what's going on there. And then when I jump to, and go back to the newsletter and what I talked about once we got into the to the U.S. section, I talked about a lot about emerging markets because I really haven't gone over international that much or that closely. But yeah, I mean, so here's the thing, right? If you look at the difference, if you look at SPY and you go to the weekly chart, I still do, even though we're rallying really nice, I still think we're going to hit levels where there's going to be overhead sellers. And I don't know that for sure, but that's my guess. That would be 260.75 at SPY. But you could see that we're starting the year underneath value, right? We talked a little bit about that in last week's webinar. So this is kind of a continuation from Thursday's webinar where we really talked pretty broad strokes and overall strategy, trading options versus stock. This one I want to get into a little bit more the nitty gritty. I want to talk about sectors that I favor for 2019. And then I want to talk a little bit about single names and what I think are good setups and a couple of the trades that I took today and a couple of the trades I took off today. Why did I take those trades off? I'll kind of just go through. But if we start with consumer discretionary, right? Discretionary actually started the year inside value, right? So I view that as stronger. And again, this is the weekly chart. So the bogey here, if you want to just play the whole sector, which we are going to. I haven't really talked too much about this either, but we're going to be coming upon earnings season. So that's going to get things a lot more complicated. So it's kind of why I want to go over a little bit of the sectors first, because if you're trading a lot of Netflix or Amazon, you can basically substitute out of the single names and go into the ETF, and this way you don't have to worry about your position if it's options or stock about it being super super volatile, and you can kind of substitute into some sector ETFs rather than hold those single names. So that's the second reason for going over, other than looking at how the technicals of the overall sector are behaving. But I think XLY looks pretty good. So 100.18 is your support, and I think that's important because if you go to the daily chart, we'll see how we look for the support is further down, right? So kind of gives you a good level of support that you can use by looking at the two different time frames, the weekly chart and the daily chart. But clearly this had a monster day. So this webinar, I know the timing isn't perfect. It would have been appropriate to do this yesterday, but it is what it is. I like that some of the groups that I sent out yesterday, they all did pretty well, and you can kind of say healthcare or biotech with the XLV, but I liked how the XLV chart looked. So before I go into the next two, let's go ahead and start to look at some of the names in XLY. So first of all, and I thought it was really interesting, some of the groups that were performing very well today. We're actually in consumer. I heard them talk about retail a lot on CNBC. They mentioned that retail was doing pretty well, which I think the XRT ETF was up over 3%. So actually finished a little bit better. I used XLY, but we could look at XRT as well. Yeah, I mean this looks right to the top of value on the daily chart and the weekly chart. So a little bit different picture, and that's why I like the XLY better. Because XLY is in value for the year, and this is hitting resistance. And keep in mind, XRT is equally weighted, so a lot of companies that make up relatively the same weight, every company gets the same weight in XRT. XLY is market cap weighted. So the number one company in this one, if we go back to Bloomberg just to look at the weights. So I don't want to go over every name in here, but I have a handful that I wanted to look at, and then we could actually just kind of look at any other ones that you guys want to look at on the list of the biggest weights, as well as any other charts that you guys want to look at. Happy to go through. But yeah, Amazon is the biggest weight. Amazon is 22, almost 23% of the ETF. Home Depot is 10%, which I've had my eye on Home Depot. But let's go to Amazon first. Amazon was nice because it was the recipient of Pivotal initiated them at a buy rating today. So that helped. They were up another 3.4%, $54 today. Weekly chart, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's going to be hitting a little bit of it's. There's going to be a lot. You're going to be able to find overhead supply and moving averages all over the place. I would say 1681 if you're long Amazon right now. Maybe that's an area that you look to take targets. I'm not long any Amazon right now, but that's what I would be looking at and probably, taking targets along the way. But that's a 200-day moving average. And notice that's kind of been a stumbling block. This one got to the point of control. Got this one, we got a little bit above value. But yeah, so I would say 1683. I would say watch the 200-day moving average. And I'm going to get into if you're looking for a run into earnings trade. I mean, that could be something else that you might consider. But we do have earnings a couple weeks away for Amazon. All right, any questions? Any questions about Amazon? But yeah, I mean, that's what I see using value areas. We did get over the 50-day moving average, but yeah, I would watch the 200. And I like, as always, when the value areas coincide with the moving averages. I think it's becomes extra important. But yeah, we've been able to get through the 5, the 20, and above the 50. So really coming back strong in Amazon. Home Depot, I think really nice day for Home Depot. It got above the value. So what's nice about this, right? So yeah, it's moved a decent amount from the lows. So if you haven't been in Home Depot at all and you're looking at it now, right? 160, you can basically draw a trend line in here for now. This could change, of course. But this was on the watch list that I sent out on Friday, and I thought this was looking good. I liked how the 5 period moving average crossed above the 20. So what do we have now? So now we're above. We are now above value. So if you want to trade this for a swing, I know it's already had a decent move, but you could use this 175.86 as your stop. And if this kind of comes back maybe into tomorrow to kind of retest, around this 176 level, I think that's where I would be looking at it. If we get a little bit of a retest, and we did, we did looks like that butts up right against that line I just drew. But the main thing, with how you guys are trading and, what I'm doing with a little bit more cash positions. Now, this is a $177 stock. I mean, you could see I've been trading a lot more stock because it's just very easy to say, okay, I'm getting in at point X, and if it breaks my stop at point Y, then I can get out without any major loss. With options, it's going to be different, right? I mean, it's hard to say, if the stock drops $2 to get out at the option, and the option actually may be down, 30-40%. Meanwhile, the stock's only down 2%, right? So it's just a little bit different risk management. Sometimes with the option, you basically have to say it's all or nothing. Right now, I don't necessarily want to trade like that. So I've been doing a little bit less option trading and doing more stock trading, just because I can define it much more better, much easier. But I do like the Home Depot chart, and I think with that support around 175, I would probably take my first target at 183, and then ultimately at the 200-day moving average. Doing the same with better results. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's also. I mean, the VIX. When I started saying this, the VIX was above 25. Today, it's all the way down to 21. So that was also my other reason because option prices were too expensive. Uh, we'll see what happens. We do have events this week as well. Yeah, I think they're difficult too. Unless you get the results right off the bat. And I know the last couple of days we have in our near-term memory, we've had a real nice run. So it's been easy. It's been a lot easier trading options the last couple of days because we've moved basically straight up. Uh, but we know that's not how it's always going to work. So, so yeah, I like Home Depot. Another one, I want to hit a couple other ones in here. But I was looking at McDonald's too. I want to hit Disney first. Disney, I'm not sure if Disney, it is above the 200. Let's just see what this looks like on the weekly chart. So some charts I haven't completely examined and done analysis on, but Disney doesn't look bad. Maybe if this comes back and retests the top of value, 109, which would also coincide. So if it comes back and retests the 200-day moving average, that might be something interesting in Disney. And again, options probably a little bit easier to deal with for Disney. So not bad. Not my favorite setup for Disney. Mickey D's, McDonald's, which had great strength back in October to December before everything, was actually outperforming really nicely. You got a nice MACD crossover. I'd say if this thing gets above the 50, it almost did today. Or even if it comes back, if you don't really want to worry about the moving averages, if this thing comes back and retests 176, bottom of value, I think that would be a pretty good setup. Remember, a lot of times we see that. We see a break above, and then the retest is usually the nice place to kind of get involved. I know some people like to, if they're playing, a move higher, they like to start a position, and then if it comes back and retests into support, then they add the rest of their position if it doesn't go straight up. But yeah, I would think McDonald's might be interesting here. 177. So that's a nice setup for tomorrow or Wednesday. 176, 177. I think that would be a good place. With a swing up to maybe 188 or maybe take a target at the point of control. I think looks pretty good. And the reason why I wanted to go over this group is because there's a lot of things going on. If you look at, so we'll kind of change gears just for a second. But this Brinker looks pretty good. Also an MACD crossover here. So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of names. So of course you can't put on every name, but I do like to kind of go through groups and say, hey, there's something going on here. Maybe because the jobs number was very good. Of course the Fed providing a little bit of a tailwind. The fact that they don't have an axe to grind with, when we gave the last webinar on Thursday night, I was talking about things that needed to change. I was talking about all the negatives. I listed all the negatives, and one of them I thought the Fed and the trade war are the two biggest issues, and the Fed just at least coming out and saying that they don't have, they're going to be a little bit more data dependent. I thought was very helpful, and the market responded pretty well. They even talked about that balance sheet runoff too. Let's see where we are in terms of raising. Yeah, there's a 0% chance that they're going to raise in January, and then the next live meeting is March, and there's only a 2.8% chance. That's a very low number. So yeah, I mean this looks pretty good from what they're expecting. Fed fund. This is Fed fund futures. The probability of a rate hike. What the market is pricing in is no rate hike for the good couple of months. I mean, this is even very low. So go back to the charts. CMG took off today. Big move for CMG. My goodness. So I mean, just like we saw a lot of these big candles on the way down. I mean, that's a huge move for Chipotle. I didn't catch. By the time I saw this, it was too late. But this thing smack closed on the highs of the day, up almost 7%. And again, relative strength. I mean, this thing barely broke the 200 day moving average for a week. So a couple other names in this group in the casual dining slash fast food. This one will be on my watch list for tomorrow. Look at the coiling that happened here and kind of a false hit the VPOC. And again, another fast mover. And we did see a little call buyer in this one today, but it was already up by the time this call buyer hit. Uh, these were the again short dated stuff. Opening trade January 67 strike. So watch this thing this is one that I'm probably I may actually play stock in this one tomorrow. And again, if it comes back and retests like 65, gets off of this overbought 1 hour. I mean, this did this before, retested maybe a little bit more. So Wingstop. Anybody ever been to a Wingstop? But just looking at the chart itself looks good. And then if you go further, this name saw call activity last week. I don't know. It could get up to 57 to the 200-day moving average. Maybe there's an activist in there, which is why they're buying calls. I don't know. Who knows? Shack even went up today. 3.8%. But I like the ones I like the McDonald's and the Wingstop better. I like that pretty tight, and the moving averages are still into today where looked coiled. All right, so that's one for. So this is consumer discretionary. This is one of the sectors that I think looks good technically. What else we got in this sector? I'll go over a couple other names. I wanted to go over a couple of the home builders too. They came up when was going over charts last night. Was screening through. Let's look at TJX and Ross Stores. Uh, TJX, it's got that 200-day moving average, so it's not my favorite setup. It's got the 200-day moving average right in front of it. It also has to get over value. This one I would probably, have to wait until it gets above and then maybe retests back in here. Raw Stores had a big day today. That one got above the 200. Remember, I mean, this is one I kind of fell asleep on. I said 78 bucks. I know we were talking about this name when it first dropped, and I think it got down to the low 80s. And I said for me, I would be a buyer at 78, but I never put the position on. It actually went down to 76, which nice support back here. That's a good quality name. And that's also at the new top of value for the year. So I would think if it gets above 89, maybe comes back and retests. Using that word a lot, the old retest. And it does look like there's a VPOC up there at 94. Looks like we went right through that value area last month. The last one that I always like to look at this name because the high short interest Restoration Hardware. Let's see what the short interest is on Restoration Hardware. This also I was looking at last night too. I did not trade. I looked at a lot of stocks last night. That doesn't mean, but I just seem to find a lot more setups. So short interest is still 37% of the float. And again, this one, no major bear market in this one. It just kind of looks like regular trading for Restoration Hardware. And this one is easy. You could use the 200-day moving average. Options are difficult in this one. They're the implied volatility is high. So again, I know it's a $125 stock, but maybe just use the 200-day moving average right here. So I like this one a lot. It's just a high price stock. Is the knock with that one. So out of those names, so I like Restoration Hardware, I like Mickey D's, and I like Wingstop for my watch list. Oh yeah, Target had a nice day. Yeah, I mean, so we could go on about consumer discretionary, definitely for a while, but definitely bring up any of the ones that you guys want to go over. Yeah, Target had a pretty big day, and this one again has got a lot of overhead stuff. But in terms of the value area, above the value area, what's the other one I was just going to look at? Macy's. Macy's, we saw two-way flow on Friday. Still kind of buried. Bottom of value is 29.27. Let's go back to Target and Restoration Hardware. Let's just look at these on the 1 hour charts for a second. But yeah, I've been using the 1 hour chart. It gets a little bit more difficult when we start the week and everything is way above value. I mean, you know, it's not the best looking out bar there on the 1 hour, but yeah, so it's harder. I mean, I used the 1 hour chart a lot last week. Now it's a little bit difficult because everything is way above value on that 1 hour. So at this point, some names I think for me to get long would have to come back a little bit. And who knows? We're just in the beginning of the week, so we could definitely. I wouldn't be surprised if we have one day where we're down with this market. I don't think we're completely. I don't think we're completely out of the woods. So and a lot of times what we do is we back and fill a little bit too. I mean, look at IWM is way above value as well on the 1 hour. So at this point, and it's tough when everything moves like this today, and we've seen a lot of option activity now for 2 days in a row on the call side. But you have to stay disciplined. And I don't want to add. I could have added 10 positions today, but I don't want to play that game of loading the boat. And the last time that everybody got super bullish, remember I'm not trying to call out the IBD swing service or whatever. I'm not even a part of it, or I don't know too much about it. But didn't they call? I think it was all the way up here. They said go long, swing long on this day. And then like 2 days later, they were like, no, no, no. They had to keep flipping it. So I think at some point, I don't know when, but if we continue to run, so be it. That would be great. But if we back and fill a little bit too, that would give you a chance to kind of look at some of these names and get in a little bit cheaper than today. And that's kind of what I'm doing. And that's why, I think it's important to kind of put together your watch list and what you like in case you do get a little bit of a pullback this week. One day where we kind of retrace a little bit. So we went over consume, and I wanted to go over the home builders. My goodness, look at Toll Brothers. Now I think Lennar reports this week, but nice, up 1% for Toll, which but out of this consolidation pretty nicely. Lennar also just above the 50-day moving average. It needs to get above value if you want to use that support. 42.87. Not sure I want to jump into this group. Um, it would probably be a smaller position. I think that the ETF looks better. It's actually not a bad place. Look at all the moving averages kind of come together here. 5 crossing over the 20, trying to cross over the 50. And you could use the support here of 31.71, which is not too far away. Let's see what this looks like on the. I would think, and your resistance here is 33.68. So that might be a little bit too close for comfort. 33.68, which is right in here, which would be the bottom of value for the weekly. So I don't know. But interesting, these home builders are coming back from the lows. DHI is another one that's not bad looking. So kind of surprising to see that they're right on the cusp of kind of breaking out of this resistance. And I think ITB. We can look at XHB too. Actually, I think ITB looks better on the daily chart. The weekly chart, you're gonna that I'm not sure how much that resistance is going to come into play, but I like that. All right, so a couple names. Anybody have anything else in consumer discretionary that they want to look at before I move on? I haven't looked at a booking chart in a while. Look at that. Ah, not really showing. On a big up day, the stock was down. I don't really like that. Delta got hit hard. They report this week. Again, I haven't had good luck with the airlines, so I would rather just avoid them. That's one of the groups that I just don't do well trading. UAL doesn't look bad down here. 200-day moving average support, bottom of value support. All right, so moving on. So next group, this group did very well today. software, and I think we were all over this in the room today, and I've been kind of so this is where it gets difficult because I do really like this group. If you go to IGV, what kind of drew me to this, just like we were looking at with consumer discretionary, this one opens up the year inside value rather than I would rather stick with something inside value than below value. Too much resistance to get over. So weekly chart, it of course has overhead resistance, just like about everything. But you could start to kind of look through names. You don't have to actually own the IGV, which is which is a very high priced ETF. The options are ridiculously bad in this ETF, but I think it looks much better than XLK. And if you start to go through the names, Microsoft has a, for a while was holding above the 200. It will just take one more day possibly for this to get back above the 200. Uh, there is a VPOC up here at 103.32, very close to taking that out. And then your support for the week is 102.08. I might as well go to this one next, Cisco, because that was also holding up extremely well while the market was going down and just kind of succumbed uh, in December. So it doesn't look horrible, but I think there's better looking setups. Well, there are two different groups of stocks. So IGV, and maybe I should have explained that. IGV is basically it's software. It's mainly software. So IGV, we'll go through a lot of these components. But this is Salesforce, Microsoft, Oracle, Adobe, Intuit. You do have the gaming stocks in here, Activision. I think Take Two is also in here. But a lot of companies like Workday, which the chart, I mean, some of these charts look really good. So versus XLK, completely different group of stocks. Apple, once this comes up here. Oh, actually, Microsoft is now the biggest component of XLK. I thought it was still Apple, but Intel, Cisco, Mastercard, Oracle. So there is some crossover. PayPal's actually in here too. Broadcom. So a little bit more chips and the XLK ETF. It's funny that they view Visa and Mastercard as tech names. I would think they're more. Yeah, I think so. So I think software, and it could also be if you look at what's going on with the trade tensions. I think the software companies are a little bit more sheltered from. They're not making hardware like Apple is. We know the issues with Apple. So I think it's a little bit cleaner in terms of the trade stuff going on, tariffs, and that of course with the semiconductors as well. So yeah, if you start going through some of these names, I could probably do this. What I've done here in the stock screener that I use, Finviz. Oh, I want to let me bring this over here. Let me just go to portfolio. So screener, and if you pay for the elite subscription, you could load up. You have to actually program a watch list. But this, I actually call it business technology because I've got more names in here. But if we go through some of these charts, and I'll go through them using the value areas as well. But it's just very easy to kind of see what's going on in this group. And if we get to, so Salesforce has been very strong. I'll go over the Salesforce chart, but interesting. This group is starting to come around a little bit. The cyber names, Fortinet. I have a call spread on for January that's most likely not going to work. Palo Alto's starting to come alive a little bit. But so let me go over a couple of the charts in this group. So one that I played last week, I actually got out of this by mistake today. I thought I had one more target to go, which is fine. I looked at it and I was like, do I want to put it back on? I'm like, no, I got into it right around here. I don't need to be greedy. There is resistance around here. This is NTNX. The new names that I got into today, which I just thought, and I'll go over more of these names. Let me hit Salesforce first because that's the big daddy, and we'll see how this sets up for now. And I know some of you have been playing this already, and you've had some nice gains from down here. So great job. It made a higher low, and everything's been kind of moving the right way. Give you a little bit of a shake and bake back here. So now I think you wait till it gets above value. And I know at this point you would be maybe looking for this to retrace back to where it was. Let's just see what this looks like on the weekly chart. But I think overall good, right? I mean, it's above the 200. I mean, the weekly chart looks pretty good too. Maybe a little bit of resistance, $5 up at 147. That's the top of value for the year. So, that's up here, right around this top of value. But again, anything that's above the 200 at this point, because the major averages are still well below the 200-day moving average, just shows you nice relative strength. And this one just, reported. You don't have to worry about this one. They reported 11/27, so you got another month and a half before this one reports. So I like some of the smaller names in this group. Start with Twilio, real nice, move. I mean, this is completely different looking at this one. New MACD crossover, no weakness whatsoever. It's very strong. Workday, which I played Workday about 2 weeks ago, call spread. This one actually was basically flat today. Kind of took the day off while everything else was moving up. But I think really strong. So this is where the strength is. I got involved in keys today, which again is another. So the chart just looked really good to me. I've been monitoring this name for the last couple weeks. It did not make it over here. I thought it would do it, but it came right back. Last week it tested this, came right back in here, and I spotted this late on Friday, which is I sent this out as the watch in my the watch list to you guys, and I jumped on this on the open today. I was like, I'm not going to let this thing rally. So real nice. I didn't take any targets in this thing. I want to try to hit that dotted line up there. I took some other trades off today, so I figured I'll let this one. It's a new trade. I'll let it run. Closed on the highs today. But if it gets up to 66.50, that I've already got a target out there. And then Zen is another one that I like. These are names that had good earnings. So I jumped on this one also on the open. Same thing. It's got to get above value, so it's not perfect. Kind of stopped at that red line at the top of value, but it's above the 200, and that's good enough for me. I know where to get out of it if it can't get above value. And again, it's a nice thing about stock. I don't have to worry about if it takes a while to do it, the running clock, wouldn't you have an option trade on? But this is Zendesk. Another one is what was the one I so another one. Of course, alert goes off, and again, I can't. You can't get into 6 or 7 of these things. I think that's not being diversified. So you kind of have to pick and choose. But VeriSign also looking interesting. Also MACD crossover there, but that doesn't look bad either. Someone mentioned Sienna today, which had a really good earnings report. And sure enough, that thing popped today. So again, no bear market in Sienna. What a beautiful chart. So there's this. Isn't that nice when you see like some of these stocks when we've had a 20% correction that some of these stocks haven't even budged. Glue, sure. Yeah, that's also a nice one too. And this is a low price stock too. So let's. I think this is still retracing levels, right? Wasn't this higher at one point? No, maybe not. That's a nice breakout. Oh, it was higher. Yeah, I thought it was up to 14. But yeah, you've basically gone through. So it looks good on multiple time frames. Now above. This is developing bar obviously for the week, but real nice move. Uh, so again, we talked a lot about retest. If this thing comes back for whatever reason and retests 810, if you're not in it, that could be a good place. Nice name, Bob, to look at. QNST also really nice. Yeah, pretty move. This MDB also doesn't look bad. Another small cap software name. I know it's been a tricky name. I tried to play that name once and it didn't really work out for me. TTD doesn't look bad. Trade Desk. Retaking the 50-day moving average. I was going to look at HubSpot. You know, this one I think had decent earnings too, and market just didn't like it. It was a bad time to report. Now above the 200, so I think this is another good one to watch. Yeah, TDC was one I think I sent out too. But yeah, I like this chart a lot. This Hubs. Unfortunately, these things are so high priced. I would love to put this on in stock and just leave it on versus the 200-day moving average. Getting above here would help. Where's the value area for this? Weird. I don't know where the value area is. Um, I've been noticing that sometimes. Yeah, TDC also looks very good. 200. I think I like Hubs a little bit better. So really good. Really nice strength in this group. Squares in this group. Square doesn't look bad either. Starting to get above that trend line. Splunk. Remember Splunk had good earnings and the stock really just didn't respond. So these things are all like around 100, $120. So that's back above the 200. What else? What's another one I'm trying to think of in this group? I think we went over Twilio. Yeah, here's TDC going over this. Um, ServiceNow. That's the other one I'm thinking of. I got an alert on ServiceNow. This one's a little bit more expensive, 186. So again, not bad looking. This one's going to have earnings in a couple weeks. A few other ones. Last couple ones, team I got out of. I'll go over that. Data, it looked like there was a call seller today. Okta is another one that's been pretty strong looking. Yeah, I had a tiny piece of team. So this basically got to where it was. I got shaken out of a portion of this. I had put this on in here on the break of the trend line, if you remember. I think I hit a target here, took some more off here, and I took my final piece off. Another name that I got out of today was Five. I think I got out of this one a little bit too early, but that's fine. I saw a put buyer in this today, which got me out of it right here, and then of course we kind of came back. But that's fine. I could always get back. Sometimes it's good to take some positions off. You can't own everything. All right, so again, of this group, right? You kind of have to just pick and choose. I picked the ones that I liked, the keys and the Zen today, but there's a number of other ones. I think I like that Hubs probably next. And then the third group that I mentioned went nuts today. So I was like, I kind of, for the weekend, doing my research yesterday, watching the football games, crazy football games yesterday. But I'm like, okay, I've, spent some time. I'm like, yeah, the healthcare group. Yeah, this will be good. And then, of course, we get all these. We get Sage comes out, and it's a big week for healthcare. They've got this big conference going on. But this is another one. If we go back to just to take a look at the cues for a minute on the weekly chart. I think we're below value for the cues as well. Oh, actually, we're now. We'll see where we close for the week, but we might be coming back into value. That would be really good for the cues. Yeah, I don't. I generally have been trying to avoid buying on the open, but I looked at the keys in the Zen on Friday, and I said, you know what, wait a little bit. And I just thought we were going to have a little bit of momentum today. So I actually, kind of broke a rule and bought on right on the open today. So then if we go to XLV, you can see XLV is again very different looking picture inside value. So names that I like in this one, we can kind of go through and I'm looking in XLV, and if we could look at we could look at the three different ETFs here. We could look at IBB, which has been the one that's IBB and XBI. The biotechs have been doing really well. That's now in value based on what it did today. We'll see where it closes for the week. Again, this is a weekly bar for IBB. Again, completely different ETFs. This is market cap weighted biotech. XBI is equally weighted. This one's below value for the year. So 8303 will be that. So you kind of have to pick and choose. So within biotech, I mean, and healthcare, we'll kind of just say them as one group right now. I know there's a lot of subgroups, but I like, the Merck chart. There's not a lot to dislike about the Merck chart, even though it was down today, 1.1%. I got long INSEE last week. I took a target because I was chicken today. At the end of the day, I'm like, hey, I got a nice gainer in this one. So I still like INSEE. I would like to try to hold the rest to the version point of control 86. That's going to be tough to do, but I'm holding stock. So I think now that I got that target out of the way, I'll hold it. And if it happens to come back and recheck, then I could do something. But I like that VPOC hanging up there at NC. A couple other charts that I think look pretty decent. I mean, Regeneron had a big day on Friday, kind of backed and filled a little bit today. Yeah, I mean, when keep in mind for the those two positions, the keys and the Zen, I bought stock. I did not mess with the options. Biogen also on my radar. Biogen, had this big move up on the drug study and has done nothing but go down since then. What a great place to say get out of position, because look at what this thing has been doing. And I know this is a little bit more complicated because you have this conference this week and drug studies. So, you know, I would rather have a few small positions in some of these biotechs than one large, because it's kind of out of my depth. You have a bad drug study and the group goes, the whole group goes. I mean, sorry, the name can get blasted. Let's see if any um, here, if anybody wants to look at any charts. Mylan had a big day today. Pfizer's kind of been frustrating. It's been kind of locked in this range. UNH fell apart. CMO doesn't look bad. Some of the medical device names have been starting to come alive a little bit. I think that's all I have in this. Are these Finviz up to date? I think so. Oh, AbbVie is another one that's starting to wake up. That's been on my radar. I think it's got to get above the 200. I don't like how the 200 is kind of looks like an umbrella. Stick with the A's. Abbott. Um, EW doesn't look bad. Right above that, you could use the 200-day moving average. Again, another high price stock, $150. But if it gets above the 200, you're going to have earnings in a couple weeks in some of these names. Striker. So again, it depends on the name. Some names don't look great. Other ones look a little bit more constructive. So this one, I think it depends on the name, right? It's good to look at the overall group. Um, but I think picking stocks in here, because some of them look a lot different than the other ones. I like the CW here. What's another one? ABMD. It's still kind of stuck a little bit. This one. That's not jumping out at me. Same thing with ISRG, not really jumping out at me either. That might be a name to watch for earnings. Reports earnings in a couple weeks. All right, guys. Any questions? I think we went. So that's we've gone an hour. Um, I could talk to you a little bit more about strategy with trading names, but um, I don't want to get super. I was talking about with the name with five, right? I mean, why did I take this thing off today? I was made about a 15% move since I put it on. Should I have probably left the last piece on? Probably. But I was also looking at, you know, I like this because you could see trend lines in here. So that's kind of what I saw in the five, and plus I saw a put buyer. So there's no reason to be super super greedy, and I thought that was a good place. What I've liked is I was trying to get a target of I think up to here 122, but hey, it made 15 bucks. That would be another bit of ways, and I didn't have that big of I actually had a small position on. So So that's it. A couple other names. Oh, speaking of, I didn't really go over. So that's three groups, but there's other groups I'm watching too. Las Vegas Sands, I think looks interesting. Some of the Chinese internet names. WB, I'm still long. I did take a target on this one on Friday, so now I can kind of let the rest of it run. I'm actually going to try to take another target at the top of value, 65, and then maybe let that last piece run. I thought Baba looked pretty interesting. Well, I mean, just going through these different charts, I used the 1 hour a lot last week for swings, and now that names are kind of above value for the week on the 1 hour chart, now I'm using the daily for swings. We're not talking too much about day trading, which I use the 5 minute. So Baba bounced off of support. I think these names are going to need. Yeah, JD looks pretty, a nice move. I mean, that's a real, I like that a lot. And you could define, first of all, it is a low price stock. So again, you don't have to trade options, $22. And this you could use, it's going to be a pretty uh, tight stop, but 22.27, you could use that stop of 22.27 and see where this thing wants to go. But again, I think for these things, I mean, it might make sense, to have one on in case they do get a trade deal. By chance, they happen to get a trade deal on. I mean, what are you going to be? You kind of have to think about a scenario analysis. Now, who knows what they're going to do, right? We don't know. But probably if they don't get a trade deal done, the market will go down, I would think. But if they happen to make progress, or a miracle and the trade deal does get done, what's gonna rally hard? Probably this group, right? I would think that this group would rally the hardest. So you could pick one. I picked one, so that's kind of why I have this WB on. Yeah, he dodged the charges, the CEO. But yeah, I like how this thing's above the 50. It's out of the channel. So I mean, I think it. Yeah, IQ, we saw a whole bunch of option activity. That one's also, it's got to get through that resistance at 1854, but hey, it was up 6% today. It was up a buck. So, a lot of these, you could use that top of value resistance as your place to take it off if it's got a decent distance, which it did. But big call buying in that one on Friday, and it worked. Yeah, I mean, it absolutely could be done in incremental stages, but I think this group will be the most sensitive if they get something done. And I go right to the K web when I hear China stuff. Yeah, a good one. Yeah, if you want to leave something on in case something does get done. Again, I wouldn't have a huge position, but I want some exposure in case they manage to get something done. Last group, which is also going to be sensitive, but look at this Xilinx. Some of the semiconductors looking really decent. I didn't trade AMD. I know some of you guys traded AMD today as well. Above the 50-day moving average now. Oh, the only one I re-added today was MRVL. So no harm, no foul. I'm back in this one with support with $16 is my level. We saw call buying in this one last week. I got into it. I think it was on this day where we saw the call buying, and it kind of gave it back, and I'm back in. Smaller position than first time around. Yeah, should be good for chips as well. Yep. All right, guys. Any other charts? I know this Broadcom got pretty beaten up last week. This was also showing some good strength. The First Solar is also on my radar. Last stocks I'll end with, which are a little bit just kind of one-offs because I mentioned those three sectors I like. Doesn't mean I don't want to participate in anything else, but I think Valero looks interesting. So why did Valero catch my eye? If you go to the weekly chart in Valero, yeah, I mean if it ends up being nothing, I would think the market's going to be weak, a little bit weak again. But this thing tagged the top of value perfectly for 2018, and now is inside value. Valero. Same thing for MPC. A couple of refiners. I like Valero the chart better because this one's a below value for the year now for the for 2019. Okay, cool. Well, if there's no other questions, it's a lot of names to go over. It is tough to kind of pick and choose some of these names, and to see all these names go up today because you can't be in every single name. So you kind of just have to manage, and then make sure that you're taking targets because I do think that I'm not sure that we're completely out of the woods, even though we've had a couple nice days. Got overhead supply, we've got a trade deal that needs to get done, and I'm sure some other things that we don't know about. So, all right, guys, have a great night. I'll see you guys back in the room tomorrow.